The Ambitious Africans podcast is building more than conversations. We're building a thinking community. If you're navigating a challenge, transition, or decision in your personal or professional journey, we invite you to share it with us using the link below. Selected reflections will be discussed in future episodes where other listeners will offer their perspective, insights, and lived experiences. This is not about having it all figured out. It's about learning out loud, hearing different viewpoints, and lightening the mental load by thinking together. Your submission can be anonymous, and the goal is perspective, not judgment. Go into the show notes below, fill out the form, and share your challenges, ideas, thoughts, and decision points with us, and we'll be more than happy to give you some directions. Dear ambitious African, this is your host, Secho. In this podcast, we will discuss everything about our journeys and experiences towards achieving our goals for life and work as phenomenal change leaders in our varied communities. We will feature other ambitious Africans crushing it through arts, social activism, tech innovations, entrepreneurship, and positive lifestyle and holistic well-being. We are the generation that is redefining Africa as we know it, and as an ambitious African, now is the time to get involved. Give us your feedback and ideas for our next podcast, and let's keep the conversations going. See you inside. Hi, welcome to the Ambitious Africans podcast. This is your host, Secho, and I hope you had an amazing day today. My day went really good today. I wasn't great in the morning. My mood was just low. I was just a bit tired, but it turned out great towards the end. I got this opportunity. I called this old friend of mine from uni days, and it was such an amazing conversation. It's just catching up and learning all about her life and her new family. She has a baby. It was really nice, really, really nice. So I would confess that really gave me energy to to record today's episode, because I wasn't having an active, happy-go-lucky day. But I do value the commitment I have to you to show up here and to trigger your thoughts. The whole point of the Ambitious Africans podcast is to build a thinking community. And I feel like there's a lot of change that is happening in our ecosystems, in our different industries, but more especially within us as young Africans and ambitious Africans at that. I feel there's a new wave coming. It's coming slowly, but surely enough it is. And it's one that is defying what was handed to us with a lot of curiosity and genuine want to understand. And that is an important step to recreate the future we want to have for ourselves and for other people we love. I mean, we can't continue having Africa be the way it's always been. It just won't work, because our ambitions are way too bigger to fit into Africa the way it currently looks. We need to expand what Africa can do in terms of capacity to contain our ambitions. A couple of months ago, I was part of a leadership program. It was like, I think, a 6-month long program. And I was selected as one of the few people to share my, experience so they could improve the program for their second pilot, or I think their second edition. And somebody was making, one of the ladies on the call was like, oh, a lot of Africans are worried about their job loss. And I think this was like in not August. I think this was in June or July, I don't remember, of 2025. But long story short, she's going on saying that, so this is at this stage, there are a lot of layoffs happening. And she's telling me, she feels like a lot of young Africans or young professional Africans are worried about losing their jobs, and it's just causing fear that it's really like a Western thing and not necessarily an African thing. And she doesn't feel like young Africans should be worried about it. And this was my response. And I remember it so well because I think it was one of the things I was thinking about. I'm always thinking. But yeah, it was something, I was like, that's an interesting take. But for me, I don't think it would be a fair assessment of exactly what it means to live and work in this era, especially when the world is flattening so much that access is so evident. You can see access in front of you, and yet you just can't grasp it because of so many things. And some of these things are things that can be solved in terms of infrastructure, in terms of education, in terms of exposure. These are things that can be solved, right? So this was my response. I told her, well, if you think about it, the young African has been trained and equipped to take on any kind of role that they want to in their various industries on the global stage. We've told them to dream bigger. We've told them to think global, and they're doing that. Now, because of how talented these people are, they do realize that the kind of jobs they want to have are not available in their various countries currently. So even if you're from a Malawi, or you're from a Namibia, or you're from a Nigeria, even the Nigerias of this continent, right? They do not necessarily have the full scope or the full design of the kind of jobs they want existent in their countries. And so what do? They position themselves to think global and to attract foreign jobs. And so it's not enough to say we shouldn't be worried about these global jobs fading or having these issues, because that is where we've decided to go, because the countries we live in cannot contain us. Unfortunately, it hasn't developed to the level that we have developed in terms of skill, experience, and other things that we've used to prepare ourselves for the job market. And so we really, really are impacted by some of these shortfalls and some of these layoffs in ways that may not even be apparent. And the sad truth is that if we keep at the pace of development in our various countries, you end up realizing you're 60, 65, 70, and not so much has changed in your country. And yet your own very life is almost gone, right? You only have one life. Are you going to spend it under a regime or a system that isn't expanded to contain all the full expressions of your potential? Or you're going to say, I have only just one life. I love my country. I love everything about these people, but they can't give me the exposure I need. They can't give me the kind of jobs I need and I know I deserve and I know I have trained for. And so at some point you have to make that big decision to go global. And then when these issues come up, it just becomes another, oh my God, once again, I'm African, right? And I say this because I feel like most of the people in different conversations around how do we design a new Africa always take two forms of let's fix the leadership or let's speak to the youth. And I feel like we need to come to a merger of those things, because a lot of time has been wasted. People's lives are at stake. Like, people don't have multiple lives. It's not like I have it's not like I have 9 lives where I'm going to say, oh, let me spend 3 of them living and waiting for things to change in my country, and then I'll spend the other 6 trying to look elsewhere. No, I already only have 1. And if I don't do things right, 30, 45, 50 years would come and I'm still here, and then I would have children, and they'll all be in these systems that do not necessarily inspire them to dream. And so it's important for us to merge both, where we are taking from the wisdom from older people, and then we're guiding the solutions and guiding the dreams of younger people. Now, the entire context of what I just shared is to really bring into what we've been discussing about generational wealth over the last couple of episodes. To be honest, the concept of generational wealth has changed since the Very first episode for me. And I didn't even think that was possible. I felt I was just going to share this one idea, this one thing that had happened to my friend. But then I'm learning from you that there's so many things to consider to make that judgment to say perhaps we should be building on older people's work or older people's efforts. But there are lots of things we need to unpack. One of them is navigating family systems that no longer serve their purpose. And one of them, obviously, is dealing with parents who, out of well-intentioned thought processes, set up the family system in a way, and coming to the point where we are like, guys, this idea that came to mind, I feel like people should once in a while call their children and have a feedback session with them and ask them, how do you feel about parenting? I feel like every year or every 6 months or every quarter, as part of a family meeting, you share a feedback questionnaire with your kids. I mean, since we are all talking about changing the next generation, that's an idea. That's an idea I would implement and say, tell us what's your own experience about how you're being parented. Are there some things that you feel could be improved, right? But then in the spirit of not constantly shifting things to the next generation, doing it for the next generation, because that is in itself a form of procrastination, I want us to think about how we can by ourselves manage family systems here and now, first on the parent side and then on the sibling side. We spoke a bit about the parent side, but today I want to speak about the sibling side. Towards the end of the previous part two, if you haven't listened, it's part two of Generational Wealth is a Scam. Towards the end of that episode, I talked about how, actually, I asked a question: if you trusted your siblings. That is a big question to ask yourself. If you ask me, that is such an important question to ask yourself as you're thinking through generational wealth. If there's something to learn, there are three things, right? One is generational wealth is a team effort. You can't do it by yourself. A team can be you and your spouse. A team can be you and your siblings. A team can be you, your siblings, and your spouses. A team can be your parents, you, your siblings, your spouses, your kids. But it is a team sport. You can't do it alone. You can if you want to, but in terms of compounding and maximizing effort, it has to be a family thing. It's something you're all doing as much as possible. But then it also talks about how even in our relationships with our siblings, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. I think even for me personally, one of the things I have learned and come to appreciate is that I actually do not even fully know my siblings beyond a certain age. There was a time where all of us were in one house, and after that, people started leaving. Some people got married, some people went to school, and so I can possibly say that for the last 20 years ish, I wouldn't say I fully know my siblings, because life really happened in those 20 years, and we were not at the same place in those 20 years, right? And so there's so much I don't know about my siblings, and the whole concept of befriending your siblings, getting to know them, or trying to establish some form of relationship beyond just being siblings has been one thing that I am trying to do. And I will tell you, it's not been easy. It's not been easy, not because my siblings are like unapproachable, but it's like, oh, how do I do this so it's not awkward? Literally, that's it. Like, how do I do this so it's not awkward? Like, you've known this person you literally your whole life, and then it's like, but then there's also life happening, and this, I mean, I'm still thinking through ideas on how we can get this done. But I think talking about this whole generational world being a team sport has just challenged me to rethink the way I approach my relationship with my siblings. I would also say that the concept of being compared to your sibling at some point in your life is something that most of us who have younger siblings or elder siblings have experienced. That it takes the shape of your younger sibling doing so well in one thing or the other that your parents wish you did well in. But unfortunately, you're not built like that. And so then, in their bid to say, I want to I want to push you, I want to inspire you to improve. I'm like, they're like, why can't you be like your little sister? Why can't you be like your little brother? He seems to always get things done. And what I have learning especially from my little sister, a couple of months ago, we were having these conversations. Actually, she says this a lot of the times, that all the things that she did right in the eyes of my parents were so because I I wasn't willing to do them, and she didn't feel like she had any other option than to do it. And I felt a bit sad. Let me give you a practical example. So, and this is like really airing my dirty linen, but it's not so bad. But let's say for example, like, well, growing up, my parents were raised us, especially as girls. We're like we are four ladies and one gentleman, siblings, right? So one of my mom's efforts to teach me or get me into the kitchen was telling me, you cook for your husband, or what will your children eat and things like that. And I'm like, those reasons were not valid enough for me to go into the kitchen. And then she would now resort to my little sister to say, come help me in the kitchen. Now my sister was telling me that for her agreeing to join my mother in the kitchen, right, was not because she enjoyed it or it was something she was like, pick me, I'm a better sibling. It was just so she didn't want to add on to another form of disobedience. She just complied because it's like she doesn't want drama, kind of thing. And I hope I'm quoting her rightly by what she said. And I feel like maybe for siblings who may have been compared to us, that is, if you are on the receiving end of that comparison, maybe it's a healthy exercise to ask the people that you were you were compared to, and genuinely ask them how they felt, because the fact that they were comparing me to my younger sister, who in this case was like my mom's good child because she was in this kitchen scenario, was like a compliant child. The assumption is that we think, my assumption was that she enjoyed it. Like if it felt like she was being put on a pedestal and she was given this prize, chances are she didn't even like it. She didn't even want to be compared to anybody. And I think that's my learning that I want to share with you, that maybe it's healthy to just out of curiosity ask your sibling and inquire, when mom was comparing me to you, how did that make you feel? Did you ever feel like that boosted your confidence? And have an honest conversation from there. I'm not going to say my scenario with my sister is going to be the same scenario experience you would have. But I think that as we're all growing up, there has to be that conscious effort. As we're consciously pursuing friends, consciously pursuing relationships, it's healthy to also pursue your sibling relationships more intentionally and consciously, and to have those kind of open conversations. One of the things that I have come to appreciate that with these like sibling relationships is that nobody in your family would understand you. Not many of them would fully understand exactly who you are, but especially your parents. There are most parents who do not necessarily understand, or like their kids. I'm sure my mom doesn't understand me sometimes, but she loves me. But your siblings can make an attempt because you're around the same age, hopefully, or I'm guessing, or you're around the same you're around the same kind of conversations or similar conversations. Like you're all on social media, for example, like those kind of ecosystems, right? And so in instances where you didn't feel understood by your parents, would it be healthy, not because you need to be understood by your siblings, but would it be a healthy exercise to even have that kind of conversation, open conversations with someone who is family but not your parents? And by building that muscle of simply having those conversations, we can repair the gaps and the distance that exists in our sibling relationships. The whole point of all of this is that if you want to build generational wealth and have this team effort happen, you can't do it by ignoring the gaps that exist in your sibling relationships. Whether those gaps were fueled by comparison from parents, whether they were fueled by distance or age gaps, whether they were fueled by misunderstandings from the past and just like temperamental things, you can't have that conversation if you have not done the initial foundational work of really repairing that friendship or repairing that relationship and trying to see things from their perspective. That's something that I am also learning. I'm sure my siblings listen to this podcast, and I don't want them to judge me like, I don't practice what I say. But I try to see things from their perspective, and even if I don't admit it. But yes, I do try to see things from their perspective, and I do feel that maybe that is a healthy opportunity to explore with your own siblings. I think at the end of the day, what we really want to go out of this generational wealth conversation is that we now have we now have two new mandates, right? We now have a new family relationship mandate, like current family relationship mandates to improve and do better. But then also we have a new parenting mandate as we move forward. Because if we're going to build anything, we need to make sure we trust each other. We need to make sure we believe each other. We need to make sure we can lean on each other and rely on the other person and not take advantage of them, even in that reliance or dependence, to have healthy conversations and to listen to the things that would be very difficult to hear from the other person. Especially if you're an elder sibling and you think you know it all, you think you know everything about your siblings. Chances are you don't. And so it would even be an even better conversation to have if you take the lead as an elder sibling, especially if your parents do not have that kind of dynamic and you want to do better, especially for the aunties, uncles of your children. You want to do better by them. You want to start by having those kind of conversations, call a family meeting and work your way through the hard conversations, because that is where the effort begins. At the end of the day, we can only build on what has been repaired, and we can't skip the hard work of repairing, of mending, of stitching together and trying to match. We can't. This would be the last episode in this series. I didn't think it was going to be a series, but this would be like the last episode, unless somebody else comes with a voice note and says, Diana, then maybe we can have a YouTube live or something. But I really do want to hear your thoughts about this. What has been your own experience thinking about all these things about generational wealth and what it really requires? If there's any lesson to go out of this, it is that we need to dig deeper than follow Instagram and TikTok videos about building generational wealth. But generational wealth don't just happen by you making New Year resolutions. They come with hard work if you want to do it right. And some of these hard work requirements is what we've explored. Conversations with parents, conversation with siblings, conversation with self and even spouses, right? Yeah. So think about it and let me know what you get on you what comes to mind. I would really love to hear from you. But I'll see you in the next one. In the next episode, we're going to be talking about something very interesting. I'm going to be sharing some unconventional things I have learned since moving abroad. Ah, my God. It's not what you expect. It's not what you expect. So you don't want to miss this one. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.